your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition.
Hello, I'm Naveen Day. Thanks for joining us for a look at what made headlines this past week. If you were surprised by the spike in price for fuel at the pumps on Monday morning, that could be just the start of further increases ahead. This is in part due to the reinstatement of Alberta's provincial fuel tax and the federal carbon pricing plan, which rose from $65 a tonne to $80 a tonne, both of which took effect on April the 1st. On Monday, Al Nelson with CJD Trucking says his company's fuel costs are on the rise.
Didn't impact us a whole bunch. Our fuel actually just went up about 4 cents a litre this morning, which isn't a huge impact. We'll be watching it and monitoring it as it goes up. What we usually do is when it gets to a point, whatever that point may be, we'll add on a fuel surcharge onto our rate and pass on the cost to our customers.
And it seems the recent cost hike in gas could mean more money for governments, but in turn mean less food in our bellies. It's simple economics. Rising input costs lead to higher prices for consumers. And the recent 23% hike in the federal carbon tax and the reinstatement of Alberta's provincial fuel tax has become a hard pill to swallow for Alberta's producers, business owners, and consumers alike. Co-owner and pitmaster of Lethbridge barbecue joint Hickory Street, Devin Bone, says she is dreading the thought of passing the additional costs on to her customers.
I lose sleep at night worrying about how we're going to pay for everything and what my bills are going to look like next week. Literally, I look week to week at what I'm buying. I haven't done a price increase in a while, and I keep thinking that I'm going to need to, but I'm just looking at everybody who just got hit as much as I did. And I have a hard time as a mom and a small business owner being able to comfortably raise our prices, so I'm a little worried about that.
As for consumers, it's not just at the pumps where the pinch will be felt. Director of Alberta Grains and Farms David Bishop says the carbon tax hike is affecting the input costs for food producers.
We do have irrigation, and of course that affects our cost of irrigating because of course the power goes up with the increase in the carbon tax. Our shops that we do repairs in, they're all heated with natural gas, so we pay more there. So it hurts, and the unintended consequences are the fact that all our inputs that come into the farm, the carbon tax increase all falls on to those people that deliver all those goods and manufacture them.
And for Bone, the hiking costs is just the latest of back-to-back hurdles her business has suffered over the last 4 years.
We've only dealt with challenge after challenge. And during COVID, we literally would play the Premier's address every time he would talk, and we would listen and wait for what kind of restrictions we were going to have to deal with. And finally, when that let up, we kind of thought we were seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, so we decided to make the big move to downtown. And we move into downtown, and then we're surrounded by construction and people can't get to us. So it has been hurdle after hurdle, and now I'm looking at this going, I have to raise my prices in order just to cover my costs and my staff's wages. How can I do that and hope that people still walk through the door when I know their utility bills have gone up, their gas pump prices have gone up, everything's gone up?
The twofold tax hit is not sitting well with Albertans, some of whom have begun protests like this one in Cochrane, urging the federal government to end the carbon tax. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day. We will have more reactions to the carbon tax hike later on in our show. According to a report, no use of force was used in 99% of calls to the Lethbridge Police Service last year. The 2023 use of force data was recently presented to the Lethbridge Police Commission. It says last year, Lethbridge Police responded to nearly 38,000 calls for service, and 99.5% were resolved without any use of force. The 0.5% of cases where force was used involved 217 subjects. There were no fatalities, and in most circumstances, no visible injuries. Lethbridge Airport will soon get a boost. The government of Alberta is providing funding to the altitude of $1.13 million in grants to support the development of 10 regional airports, including our own Lethbridge Airport. Lethbridge received $150,000 to support a hangar development feasibility study and business case.
So the hangar feasibility study and business case is the project that we're focused on with this money. We've heard from our area partners in the aviation industry that this is something that's important to them. So we're optimistic that with this work, we'll be able to dig in, really find out what the needs of the region are, and be able to put a plan in place to activate either some capital money in the long run and or a business plan to develop commercial space out at the airport.
Still to come after the break, stories from around our province. Keep it right here. Horns blared along the Trans-Canada Highway west of Calgary as a carbon tax protest slowed traffic to a crawl on both Monday and Tuesday. It was one of many held across the country over Ottawa's $15 per tonne or 23% increase to the federal levy.
I'm here because our country is falling apart and our government has been running us into the ground, and this needs to stop. You know, it's not just about acts of tax, it's about the freedoms and it's about our rights to free speech. It's about, people got to realize it's not just the one tax, it is, we are getting hit from within as well, right? So within the province. So, and it's, but the carbon tax is big. It's for me, it's, you know what, it's, you're taking money from us, and for what? I have yet to see anything that's been done.
I'm really impressed, and we had so many people waving and shouting and blowing their horns all the way down Highway 22. It was good. I think it's only going to build. This is just the beginning. It's going to build, and there's people that are prepared to stay here as long as it takes.
The trial of 3 men facing charges for their involvement in the 2022 Coutts border blockade got underway this week. Alex Van Herk, Gerhard Jansen, and Marco Van Hugenbos have each pleaded not guilty to mischief over $5,000. Prosecutor Stephen Johnston told the jury in his opening statement Wednesday that the 3 defendants played a key role in blocking the highway at the Canada-US border, and that evidence will show the 3 men were leaders of the blockade and had a final say over what happened. However, the defense pursued a contrary narrative of a mishmash protest where no one had the power to call the shots. During a video played in court, Van Hugenbos and Van Herk referenced the other blockade arrests along with the seizure of several weapons and urged protesters to stop what they were doing. Jim Willett, the former mayor of Coutts, was called as the first witness in the trial. He testified Coutts is the only 24-hour crossing to the U.S. from Alberta and a busy route for truckers and tourists. Willett said he was concerned about the convoy affecting residents' access to grocery stores and medical clinics outside Coutts, since the village doesn't have those services. The trial is scheduled to run until April the 19th. Alberta government officials say they are creating a couple of new organizations that will support the development of addiction systems and mental health care. One will be called Recovery Alberta and will be responsible for the delivery of mental health and addiction services. The province will also be establishing CORE, or the Canadian Centre of Recovery Excellence, to build recovery-oriented systems of care by researching best practices for recovery from around the world. Premier Danielle Smith says by collecting more data, they are in turn able to care for more vulnerable Albertans.
We want to make sure that we've got good information, testing out, looking at what the outcomes are so that we're able to do more of what works and do less of what doesn't work. So we have invested in a recovery-oriented model. We've got our first recovery community that opened in May of last year. So I think we've got a lot of data now, and we just want to make sure that we're making the best decisions to continue to support recovery.
The group Friends of Medicare were not pleased with Tuesday's announcement by the Premier. In a statement released, officials said Alberta saw the highest ever number of drug poisoning deaths last year. They said, instead of addressing this crisis, we saw the Premier use cherry-picked data in an attempt to justify their model, which continues to contribute to a staggering death toll. The province also announced that it is increasing funding for family resource networks by $6.6 million over the next couple of years. Officials say this will help with access to free workshops for young parents, offer in-home supports, along with provide mentorship and life skills programming for children and youth.
Families facing big challenges can get help early, reducing the number of children who come into government care, and families who require child intervention services. When we designed this program, we were thinking of the young expectant mother in northern rural Alberta who feels isolated from her peers and wants guidance and a helping hand to help her take on the huge responsibilities she has in front of her. And the parents in Okotoks who may live far away from family and are looking for a way to meet and find camaraderie and support from other young parents, as well as Indigenous families right here in Edmonton who are searching for a place like Bantaro where they can connect to their culture and community.
The province says in 2022 to 2023, networks served more than 48,600 children and youth, along with 32,000 caregivers here in Alberta. After the break, we hear from Alberta's Affordability and Utilities Minister about what the province is doing to keep living costs under control. In the wake of the recent carbon tax hike and the reinstatement of the provincial fuel tax, affordability is at the forefront of many Albertans' minds. BCN's Hal Roberts sat down with the province's Affordability and Utilities Minister Nathan Neudorf to discuss affordability and other issues that are impacting Albertans.
Now, Premier Danielle Smith recently posted on her Facebook page that Alberta may double its oil and gas production while being carbon neutral by the year 2050. That was the message she delivered to investors in Houston recently, Nathan. Now, I thought Alberta was going to focus more on investing in the Alberta Heritage Savings Trust Fund and maybe less in the energy sector basket.
Absolutely, we are. We are making sure that we put money away for that Heritage Savings Trust Fund for generations. So we have truly a sovereign wealth fund. Our projections are for the actions that we've taken just by reinvesting the interest. We could see that fund over $200 billion of value by 2050. Now, we do want to see our economies continue to grow. That includes in the oil and gas sector, but also for hydrogen, blue hydrogen, green hydrogen, different products out of that as we diversify our economy there. That has a knock-on effect to our rail and trucking industries. We are a carbon hub here in Alberta. We look forward to further investments there. So we want to see our economy continue to grow in diversity, grow in the additional add-on values. And we think that we can do both for Albertans' benefit in the years ahead.
What do you say to those people who believe we're not doing enough to support our renewable energy sector, the green energy sector, including more wind and solar farm initiatives?
Well, the facts would say something different. In fact, in 2023, Alberta led all provinces in Canada with the largest amount of growth. Somewhere between 75 and 92% of all renewable investment and development happened within the province of Alberta. So we are leading the country in growth. We are second only to Ontario in overall renewable development. And while we've set some new parameters and responsibilities for that industry in Alberta, we continue to expect that growth to continue.
Now, you recently participated in a ministerial forum as part of the Rural Municipalities of Alberta. What were some of the bigger concerns that were raised, and how is the province addressing them?
Well, a lot of questions about where we're going with affordable housing, and I'm very proud to be on stage with Minister Jason Nixon, who is leading that. Alberta is seeing more housing starts this coming year than ever before in history. And as we increase that supply, we expect that to continue to put downward pressure onto those rental costs and mortgage costs. And that's the way that we can truly structurally address this issue. And we're really happy with our industry stepping up and helping us deliver on those new housing options for consumers.
You know, many Albertans are still scratching their heads as to why the province is moving forward with a police agency when we already have the RCMP. Now, it's not a provincial police force that was discussed in the past year. Now, folks with the AUPE that we chatted with, the union representing sheriffs, say they were really caught off guard by the government announcement. Your thoughts?
Well, I think that they shouldn't have been surprised. We've had a lot of requests for additional sheriff support in Calgary and Edmonton, and yes, even in Lethbridge. And this is a response to that to make sure that that body is governed in an independent way, just like our other police forces. So it's not a provincial police force. It is a strengthening of our transparency and autonomy within the governance structure for policing. And we look for those supports to help jurisdictions like Lethbridge, Calgary, Edmonton, and others, where they need that help because of crime in their downtown core or other issues. And we're working to help solve those problems.
A number of court cases are being launched by those who say they were hurt during the COVID-19 pandemic lockdowns. Many say they lost their jobs and even their businesses. They filed class action lawsuits, not just against the federal government, but also against the province, the Alberta government. Now, Nathan, you were a business owner yourself, owner of a construction company. Let's talk about how maybe you can sympathize with those who were hurt during the lockdowns. Is there any way to ensure that Albertans will never be hurt like this ever again?
Well, I can't comment on anything specific before the courts. Obviously, we know that it was a challenging time for every jurisdiction around the world, and governments approach it in different ways. We are interested to hear the outcome of some of those things, but until that's concluded, I can't really comment too much further, other than understanding the challenges that we all faced during that time.
Alberta Utilities and Affordability Minister Nathan Neudorf, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for joining us today from Lethbridge.
Great to be here, Hal. Thank you again for the interview.
Well, it's the first weekend of April, which means it's less than 1 month before our tax filings are due. After the break, we hear from a financial expert to talk taxes. You know, it seems like the weather just can't seem to make up its mind what season we're in. You know, just days ago, we were enjoying spring weather, and then overnight, we flipped back into winter mode. But one season we are definitely in now is tax season. Kent Prestige has decades of experience preparing taxes. He sat down with BCN's Jeanette Rocher with some advice on how to prepare your taxes and hopefully save some money. Take a look.
Well, April 30th for most people. If you have a business, it's June 15th. But for most people, it's April 30th. And the penalties, you want to file on time. If you're late filing, it's a 5% penalty on the amount of tax that you still owe. And also, if you're late filing for a whole month, each additional month, they add another 1% to it. And on top of that, the compound interest daily at 10% for this year. So you want to file on time, especially if you owe taxes.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and those fines are for if you are owing. If you're getting money back, there's not a penalty, right?
There's no fine if you're getting money back, except for, you know, you'd rather have your money in your hands right now, I would assume.
The sooner the better, right? So, Kent, ever since the COVID pandemic, there have been a lot more people working from home, and up until now, the CRA had a simplified method of claiming home office expenses, but things have changed this year. So can maybe you explain a little bit about what these changes are?
Sure. So the simplified method was if you were working at home during the pandemic, you were allowed to claim $2 a day up to a maximum of $500 for home expenses while you were working from home. This year, they did away with that. They went back to basically the old way that you would normally have had to have claimed those expenses. You'd have to have the company that you work for sign a 2200 form, a T2200. And that form is, it allows you to claim expenses for working from home. Then now you have to keep track of all of your expenses. So let's say you set aside an office and it's 10% of your home, which is quite typical. Most people would take a bedroom and set it up as an office. And that's usually about 10% of your home. So you can claim 10% of your utilities, 10% of your interest, 10% of fire insurance, and any expenses that have to do with your home. You can also claim a cell phone and other expenses like that. But again, now you have to have records to prove all of these expenses, whereas last year it was just $2 a day, $500, no matter what you claimed as expenses.
Right, exactly. Okay, now I understand that there is an opportunity for first-time home buyers with the First Home Savings Account to save for a down payment.
Yeah, actually, this is a pretty good deal. It's very similar to an RRSP. You can put up to $8,000 a year into this First Homes program, and up to a maximum of $40,000. If you take that money, well, so it's sheltered from tax, so you don't pay tax on it while it's in there. When you take it out, if you buy a house with it, you don't have to pay tax on that money at all, which is a really good deal, $40,000, with no tax on it at all. So that's a pretty good deal for a first-time homeowner, yeah.
And it's such a great way to save as well.
Exactly. You're saving on the tax as well as saving for a house.
Exactly. Kind of a win-win there, isn't it?
That's right.
Okay, so are there potential tax implications when you buy or sell a home? Speaking of home buying.
Yeah, there's some new ones that have just come out here. Like if you live in your house and you sell your house, there's no tax on that, at least currently. The Liberals may change that, but at this point, there's no tax when you sell the house that you live in. But they're bringing in new rules against anti-flipping, where people will buy a house, they'll renovate it, and then they'll sell it. Now, you used to be able to claim the income that you would make on that as a capital gain. Well, capital gains tax treatment is better than regular income tax treatment. Now if you own a house for less than a year, it's going to be treated as income, which is taxed at a higher rate. So they're trying to, discourage people from buying a house and flipping it. Although it's still a great way to make money, it's just not quite as good as it used to be.
It was a little over 2 years ago that our nation's capital was the epicenter of what sparked protests around the world. I'm talking about the Freedom Convoy. After the break, we hear from one eyewitness that shared a video during the police operation that shocked us all. It was a scream that was heard around the world. During the 2022 Freedom Convoy in Ottawa, a grandmother was seriously injured when she was trampled by police horses. One of the bystanders, who happened to be filming at the time, posted the footage to social media, where it went viral. Jeremiah Jost shares details of the horrific event with BCN's Michael Clausen.
I think everyone watching would remember the horrific video that went viral of the elderly grandmother. She had a walker. She was up in that far corner. I had been in that corner, and she got trampled by an RCMP horse. And I understand that shortly before this occurred, your wife had been holding that actual lady's arm, and you were the one who was filming the event, and you posted it to social media. Can you share from your vantage point what you saw happen? And maybe fill us in on if you thought that that force was warranted. Was this lady actually posing a threat to the police?
You know, that whole morning, there were veterans walking up and down the line saying 2 feet between you and the policeman. Stay calm. Don't raise your voices. Don't get excited. And right up until when the grandmother was trampled, there was people telling me, who's a pretty calm, reasonable guy, you remember, we need to stay calm. But this lady had walked up beside my wife. She had a walker with a little car squeegee and a white shirt hanging down, which is a sign of, we come in peace. And she was just heartfeltly speaking to these people in riot gear. I'm here. She said, I'm here for my grandkids. We're a peaceful protest. We have the right to be here. We have the right to peaceful assembly. And right after she's saying this, and I'm filming it, and I just felt like I was supposed to drop the camera down and show that she's this peaceful grandmother holding a walker. And then these horsemen come running through. And this was the second time that they had run the horses. They only ran the horses twice. I've been around ranchers and farmers who know how to ride. And I tell you, these RCMP people did not know what they were doing. They were bouncing around these horses like they were just introduced to them yesterday. And these were huge horses. And I remember just in the blink of an eye, these horses coming, and my wife and I backed up just like a foot or two. And to my horror, this lady who's in a walker, she's not this athlete who can jump back. She just gets trampled. A gentleman who tried to get in front of the horses and protect her, he was also brutally trampled. And I mean, the horrific part was she could have been dead right there. And all of us watching, we had no clue if she was even alive. So I remember me and my wife just sobbing after for a while. To this day, I can't even watch that video. I mean, they would run the horses to gain about 50 feet of progress. And for 50 feet, it's just not worth killing innocent citizens. I mean, this lady was a lady. She was an elder at her Mohawk Reserve. Just beautiful, peaceful lady.
Yeah. And I will say from my recollection of the event, I had been, and I don't know if your video shows the red pickup truck. I'd been standing on that tailgate for quite a while live streaming. And I had this really strong sense that I needed to leave and go back up to our hotel, the Westin, and we had that camera that was shooting down on that intersection. And no sooner had I arrived, we had the windows open. I arrived inside the room, and Naveen, my coworker, was recording. No sooner had I walked up to the window and I saw those horses, and I can still to this day hear the screams from that lady that went up 26 floors. Let's move on from that. I want to ask you about the federal judge, Richard Mosley. So he had stated that the charter rights were indeed violated. What did you observe? What were some of the more serious violations of our rights that you saw?
That's a great question. And even though we did kind of get an overall win in that court case, there were many charter of rights that weren't even touched. And us four people who did sue individually, there was 2 veterans, there was 1 ex-police officer, and then myself. And 2 of them had their bank accounts frozen. Myself and another did not.
The federal government is open to making changes to the Emergencies Act. After the break, Hal Roberts chats with Lethbridge MP Rachel Thomas to hear her thoughts.